I see communities as laboratories for social change, and I also see them as a way, if somebody's going to do some work in the world, to actually get support in it instead of living in the isolated way that I think most people live. When you're starting a community, it's not clear what it's all about. It's very chaotic. It's very much like, oh, we got to figure this out. We got to create policies. We got to do this stuff. So you need somebody who's comfortable with that kind of chaos and willing to really get in there and do a lot of hard work to get the thing founded. And the solution, is not necessarily to make this community bigger, but to make more communities.
This interview is with Raven, who most recently was living at Glamis and is looking to start a new community in New England. Raven manages the blog Commune Life.
My name's Raven. I've been involved, feels like I'm involved with communities most of my life. I've been growing up in a fairly large family. First started to build a commune that became affiliated with the FEC in the mid-1990s. And I've been involved with various types of community, particularly income-sharing communities, ever since. Well, as I said, I've lived with people most of my life. I've very seldom lived by myself, and I felt like I wanted to, well, at the time I was involved in a political group, a nonviolent feminist revolutionary organization where we were supposed to be doing all the social stuff, but I realized and started talking about the idea of as community as the basis for building something. You need a foundation. I'm still a social change person, but I feel like community is the foundation for doing that. I see communities as laboratories for social change, and I also see them as a way, if somebody's going to do some work in the world, to actually get support in it instead of living in the isolated way that I think most people live by themselves. They go do their job, they come home, they watch TV, maybe they have a wife or something, and they do their little thing, and lots of little isolated units, and that to me never made sense as the way to live. I actually was involved in the founding of two very small predecessors to that didn't, one lasted 6 months, and one actually never took off the way we thought it would. It became a different type of community than we expected. But Common Threads founded in 1995 was my first time actually being somewhat successful creating a community, and that lasted 5 years. The first attempt was like, in a sense, a 6-month disaster, but as soon as we finished, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I was so happy when we did it for 5 years, and when that concluded, it's just like, I wanted to do it again. It's like, this is how I want to be living. We also, another thing that was really pretty amazing was the fact that as I said, Susan moved in with her family. There were 2 kids that were basically raised by the community, Noah and Karina, and Noah and Karina still look to me and to Robert and to Amos, who joined us, as kind of like part of their parenting role along with their father, George. So like, we raised these kids collectively and we did a good job, and I think they're grateful to us because Noah had a lot of physical ailments, and Susan and George were very focused on that. Karina might have got lost in the dust, but there were a lot of adults around. Another lesson that I swear is true is that children love community. They love having all these adults and stuff like that. Adolescents, not so much. And the community broke up just at the right time when they began to say, wait a minute, you're not our parents, stuff like that. As they get older, I've seen a lot of times where teenagers just don't like being in the weirdness of community and what have you, whereas, as I said, children just love it. So that was an interesting lesson unto itself. We're skipping to the point, but this place is great. I've told people here that this is the best community I've been in 20 years since this thing, I was talking about Common Threads fell apart, but most of the folks are in their 20s, and or in their 20s or 30s, and I'm 70 now. There's limits to how much closeness I can get through that. And I said to people that, like, okay, maybe I can make up in quantity, what I can't make up in quality. But it turns out people want this place to be small. They, sometimes there's a lot of visitors, and I can see myself getting happier, and I can see most of the people, a good number of other people here, getting less happy. They like it small, they like it intimate, they like it whatever, and that's fine. It's also the most rural place I've ever lived in my life. This is, there is no public transportation here, which is like, I haven't been in a place before that there wasn't. When I was in New York City, which was quite a ways from Boston, but like I could get on a subway and take it to a bus where I could get right to, all on my own. Here, I don't even drive at this point. So I need, if I want to get anywhere, I need to get a ride to get somewhere. So I feel very isolated and rural and not as connected to the people as I want, which is, it's just the reality. The main reason because it's not a fit for me, but the other reason is also because, as I said to you, this is like the low ebb of the community's movement, or the income sharing community's movement anyway. There's very few of them, and I have that kind of drive to start community, and I feel like I would like to go out there and start another one so we actually have more communities in the FEC. That's my sort of ideological reason for doing this. It's like we need more communities. It's, people here, there are people here who are not that thrilled with the idea of getting any bigger, and there are people here who might actually want to get bigger, but we don't have the infrastructure for it right now. And the solution, is not necessarily to make this community bigger, but to make more communities. There is a thing where people talk about the fact that the skills to found a community are not necessarily the skills to live a community. A lot of successful communities have been started by people who then leave because, they're ambitious. You have to be ambitious to start a community. It's really a crazy hard thing to do. And, those type of people don't necessarily do well once the community is up and running. So, yeah, it's a problem. The biggest thing I think about community is that community is a living organism. It's not like a building. You can't just build it. You've got to, I was thinking I'm going to write an article for Community Life about this. You've got to, in a sense, birth it. You've got to treat it, and it grows and it changes. And if the founders aren't willing to change with it, if the founders have an idea, this is how we want to build the community. It's got to be exactly like this, and keep trying to hold it there. The community is never going to grow. The community is never going to really become a real community. It's just going to be the founder's dream. But people will say, well, do you want urban or rural? Do you want a large or do you want small? What do you want for mission, stuff like that? I want that to be something we determine together. I want the community to be something, not my community, not what I want, but something that collectively we come up with. I believe very, as a person who believes in community, I believe very much in community being something that's collectively grown and organic. It's sort of an emergent phenomena, is the thing that people talk about these days, that it develops as the more people we get, the more stuff that we do together, community emerges. I would rather start off with a group of people who are committed and have a vision and are willing to work together collectively to define what we want to do, and then figure out how to get the resources, to get the land, to get the money, how we're going to make income, how we're going to do all that other stuff. To my mind, this is a model that is more organic than somebody has the land. I mentioned there have been communities that needed to have the land, and they did crowdsourcing, or they find an entrepreneur that will support them, or it turns out that somebody knows somebody who has money or whatever. I do think that land is a problem, because you've got to have it in order to have the community. And I also think that, and I talk about the difference between people who start community and people who join community. The people you're talking about who are not necessarily the most ambitious or most, I forget how you put it, most, have the most ability to just go out there and do daring stuff. They, eventually I want to have a community up and running that goes that will attract those people and they can just come in and settle in. But at the beginning you need people who are really, I'm looking for people who are experienced. I don't want to be the one person who's like has community experience, and I've done that. Has the community experience. I want to be one of a bunch of people who is doing this, that knows what they're doing, and also people who are ambitious might be a way of putting it. I sometimes joke about fanatics. I'm looking for 4 or 5 fanatics who are people who are really, we want to do this, who are really driven to do this, because at the beginning you need that kind of thing, because it's not going to be easy. When you're starting a community, it's not clear what it's all about. It's very chaotic. It's very much like, oh, we got to figure this out. We got to create policies. We got to do this stuff. So you need somebody who's comfortable with that kind of chaos and willing to really get in there and do a lot of hard work to get the thing founded. And once it's up and running, then you can get your person who might like, oh, I want to try this out. I don't know if I want this or not, but let's, but at the beginning, what I'm really looking for is people who are really committed to this, who really want to do this. I want to do, when I say I want somebody who's lived in, and I don't care if they've lived in a co-op house or they've lived in whatever, but I want somebody who has some experience, but that also means that they have references, in a sense. And I probably will check them out. I mean, anybody who wanted to can check out my references. They're really, the communities I've been in and left, like Ghana's or whatever, are like, we'll take you back in a flash, I want to be able to check, and, because you don't know who you're getting, I want to be able to say, this person's been in a community, I can call the place they've been in, they say, oh, this person was really, good and whatever. I have a little more foundation than somebody who comes along, because people talk a good show. This has been one thing, my learnings in starting communities with people. They will talk a good show, and they know all this, that. But after a while, you begin to notice what they do, and it's different. To my mind, behavior is what's the most important, and the only way you get that experience, as you said, is to either live with somebody, or you check somebody who's actually lived with them. Well, what's driving me is this is the way I want to live. It's like, as I said, I've tried other things. It's not good enough for me. But failure itself is a very interesting thing. Here's a story I didn't tell you about this place. So I told you about meeting this couple, and, it didn't work out. They went and founded this place. The couple broke up. The woman was still here. In the meantime, I got involved with the Point A project. We were working in New York, but we went up to Boston. So I went up to Boston and gave a talk. We collectively gave a talk at MIT, which I advertised to all the co-op houses in Boston, because I was hoping that it would stick. And this woman comes up to me afterwards and says, hey, I know somebody who'd be really interested in this. And it was a person up in Binghamton that was interested, and they were trying to start a co-op, and it didn't work out, and they went to move to a commune in Virginia, and it didn't work out. In the meantime, I'm in this commune in Queens, and that didn't work out, and I come up here, and Sarah, who was one of the people that I was talking about founding this thing, was still here. Rachel was the woman who came up to me in Boston. The person who was trying to start the community was Teresa. And they all knew me. They all knew me because of all the work I've done. I basically moved here and got in very easily on the basis of all my failures. The things that I saw were failures were actually foundations. It was like I had made connections with Sarah, I'd made connections with Rachel, I'd made connections with Teresa, and I feel like this is, I don't count things necessarily as failures so much as like, oh, this didn't work out this time. But one thing I have never done, and the reason I say, like, a lot of communities I've been in would have me back in a flash, is that I don't burn bridges. I do my work, I do what I need to do in community, and I leave very well. I mean, people here are very happy with the way I'm leaving. And I think that's very important. And, you know, and as I said, I see, in terms of what keeps me going, it's like, I think it's the fact that this is really what I want to do. And I'm learning things along the journey. This, you know, being here was certainly far from a failure. This has been a really wonderful success for me. It's been great to be here and to learn as much. And I take that with me. And I take with me my experiences at Ghana's and at the Cottleton and the stuff I learned from Common Threads. Each thing I'm building on, and it's like I'm hoping each thing is taking me closer to what I want. The first thing people need to know is, A, it's possible to live like this. Twin Oaks has been doing it for 55 years and they're still going strong. It's a very realistic possibility to live this way, but it's not something that people can do if they don't know it's there. If they know it's there, it's like, okay, and I want to say, and there's all these flavors of it. You know, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. It's not like you have to do it one particular way. So what I'm doing with communal life is I'm documenting what it's like to live in a community. What are the possibilities? What are the problems? Because I'm trying to be realistic. I write things all the time. Like I said, people always talking about, I want to found the community. Well, what's involved in that kind of work? I mean, it sounds like, oh yeah, I'll just get a piece of land and invite all my friends and it'll be, we'll all live happily ever after. And I've seen what happens when that happens. If this society isn't working, and I believe it isn't, and we need to have something else, I'm also very into systems thinking, systems theory. And one of the things I've read, a couple of different people have said this, is there's no way to create a large-scale system from scratch. Any large-scale system that works has been built from has evolved from smaller systems. And this is the smallest scale system. You know, communism doesn't work. It's obvious. We see what happened to the Soviet Union, we see what happened in China. But Twin Oaks is a different type of communism. It was literally voluntary, built from the ground up. It's been going for 55 years. I mean, same with Eastwind and stuff. I mentioned Twin Oaks because it's the oldest and biggest and whatever. And there's an example of communism working. Each community, whether it works or it doesn't, is an experiment. And we can learn from each one of those. And each of them, in a sense, is like, okay, now we understand how to build this little piece and how to build that little piece. So, yeah, yes, I'm at heart a social change person. I want a different society, and I believe the only way to get that is to start it from the ground up and start it with little communities and learning what, I'm not saying the communities will build it, but we'll learn what works and what doesn't. And that hopefully will be lessons when things get hard, and I think they're going to hard, we'll have some of those lessons to build on.